Lexy, good morning. How are you?
I am great. How are you, Al? It's always good
I'm
to see you.
absolutely great to see you. And for those who might not know, this is Lexy Martin. She is lead researcher at Visier and the chairwoman of the People Intelligence Alliance. So, beyond that, Lexy, will you please introduce yourself a bit and a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today?
Sure. So, I've been thinking about titles. I am no longer the head of research at Visier. That's been a role that I have abdicated a bit, and it's been taken over by Andrea Derlaire and several others, which is interesting. But I am the chair of the People Intelligence Alliance. I was thinking that chair is good enough, chairwoman, chairman, chairperson,
Sure.
make it easy, chair.
All right,
Uh,
let's go chair.
yeah, but background, I'm a really long time researcher. I think people in the industry probably know that I managed the Sierra Cedar HR systems survey for the first 15, 16 years that looked at the value of HR technologies, at adoption and the value of HR technologies. And at Visier, what I've been doing is, kind of talking to customers about the value they're getting from people analytics, their practices, what are the best practices. And I've also done a lot of work kind of digging into aggregate data that we have on employees to
Mhm.
see, what's happening as a result of using people analytics. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we get going here.
Well, fantastic. And I'm going to bring up this first slide because it introduces our topic today of, inclusion analytics. So do you want to set the stage for, what
Yeah,
this work is and
I
how it
think
came
what I'd
about?
like to do though is go to the next slide and kind of put it in perspective of the People Intelligence Alliance. So if you could go to that second slide.
Absolutely. I will do that.
So, the People Intelligence Alliance is a group of data-driven leaders that are really dedicated to steer the future of work towards openness, towards transparency, towards collaboration. What does that mean? I think it's best stated by our mission, which is to connect information seamlessly between applications in support of better people decisions so as to eradicate bias and make people count. And some of the words we use, Al, have been very much, kind of supported by you, I think. Use people data for the good. Um, and actually, I think there's no better topic than to show the need for data connectivity than inclusion analytics. And the PIA was born out of the recognition that there is no one vendor solution that has all the data about people in an organization. And so we need to come together. We need to come together and find better ways for data to be connected so that new levels of insight can be achieved and used for the good of people.
Yeah, you said that very eloquently, and it's also the case where, to your point, it's not one solution, that ultimately it's going to be an ecosystem of solutions. An ecosystem arguably is a buzzword, it's arguably overused. However, it's a truism insofar as there's going to be several vendors, and how those come together and how the underlying data comes together not only presents great opportunity, but it also presents great risk and responsibility. So, yeah, can you speak to that and what we're doing with the people? By the way, I am honored to be a member of the.
Yeah, well, yeah, put up the slide on who the members are, because
Okay.
our agenda is driven by the council members.
Mhm.
So this is the Thought Leadership Council, of whom you are a primary member. It's a collaboration. It's a community of analytics practitioners who are dealing with the challenges of not having easy data connectivity. It's a collaboration with vendors that are really dedicated to better data connectivity. It's researchers like Stacia Garr and Kathy Enderis, myself to some extent, and academics, and all of them being thought leaders. And I just love to be able to work with all of you. And I love the fact that I'm also supported by some really fabulous colleagues: Lyra Mubagari, Victoria Nordal, Tara Martins. I think you've had the opportunity to meet all of them. So the council, kind of drives the agenda. And our latest topic in a webinar that we did last month was on the topic of inclusion analytics. And as I said, it's a great case for data connectivity. So I've got a few slides, that speak to what we've been talking about. And in addressing the problem to solve, we found that it's really important to be clear about what we are measuring, and definitions really matter. Excuse me. So we have a very simple, we started with a very simple definition. Inclusion analytics digs deeper than basic diversity metrics to uncover the lived inclusion of people in the organization. So, we recognize that inclusion is often measured through sentiment analysis, through employee engagement data, but the point is, the way we define it kind of dictates how we're going to go about measuring it. And I think there's more to it than it just being the lived inclusion experience of employees. I think we also need to focus on the why we want to improve inclusion, because that's going to open up measurement approaches. For example, I think about the fact that everybody in the organizations wants to make a difference, not only for themselves, but also for the organization. They want to feel included, and I think feelings are incredibly important, but we also want to see whether they're able to make a difference so that they can achieve, outcomes that are important to them as well as to the business. And then, if our definition also includes what the outcomes are, then we can talk about linking inclusion experience to outcomes that matter, things like financial performance or customer satisfaction. So we need a lot of expanded data sets to measure inclusion and to show that link to the outcomes that matter.
Yeah, particularly with outcomes, here are some that I was taken by. These are big differences here.
Yeah. So, as a researcher, the why we want to focus on improving inclusion is really important, because it actually makes a difference. And I said earlier that I've been doing a lot of research with employee data that we manage. I think it's up to almost 15 million employee records now. So we can see how organizations that are using people analytics are doing with their work to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we can see that they've got a better female leadership ratio. We can see that they're promoting female managers, for example, so that we have a better successor pool and women can break the glass ceiling. So we can really see that people analytics adoption is making a difference, at least at the aggregate level. And that chart you showed on the financial performance, we did a survey of our customers' maturity practices, and those that are working to improve DEI, their financial impact, their financial performance is better than available metrics on financial performance that I get from CSI or Stern. And they're even better than, Visier customers that are not yet focusing on trying to improve diversity, equity, inclusion. So it's just phenomenal to me that finally I've been able to see that there is a tangible impact, when organizations are working to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion.
And we always, just to pause you there real quick, because there's inclusion has often when we look back in time been kind of a buzzword, nice to have, but now, correct me if I'm wrong, not only is it critical given COVID and remote work and the difficulty to actually feel included, because like you're feeling included in a um, virtual means, but we're also seeing, to the slide that you just highlighted, it delivering financial value that, again, had been hypothesized. We all thought it would be, the case, but it sometimes gets lumped in with engagement. Sometimes it gets lumped in with other constructs. But this is an isolated construct that needs to be elevated, because I would go so far as that to say that engagement happens downstream of inclusion. Are you seeing anything like that, or what's your feelings or ideas on that?
Yeah, I mean, what I showed you there is, just it's a correlation of those that are working to improve DEI and those that aren't. Uh, there's so much more to the value of diversity, equity, and inclusion, though, and it's not always just measured by correlation to financial performance. It's also can be measured with customer satisfaction. If you're doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work, you can also take a look at whether your customers are more satisfied with your services. Employee engagement itself, you can see whether or not, employees are feeling included, whether they know that they can make a difference. It's measured through patient outcomes in healthcare, included employees, make a difference to the people they serve. I was trying. I better not go here. I was noticing a gal at Whole Foods the other day that gave me the absolute best service in a particular situation. And she was a person of color. She obviously felt empowered to be able to do the right thing for me. And I guess that's the point I want to make about inclusion is not only does it link to improve financial performance, as we've been able to show there, but it's also just the right thing to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, one of the things that we're highlighting, and I love that anecdote that you just shared, is that this is something that everyone's talking about, but actually doing it and measuring it and finding out what's working and what's not working and then adjusting over time. Correct me if I'm wrong, from what you're seeing in the data or what you're seeing anecdotally, this is an ongoing process. This is not a checkbox where you're, okay, we've done that, we're done. This is a cultural norm that is being developed, where this language is probably going to stick around,
Right.
hopefully forever. Yeah.
Right. Maybe a place to go in the slides that I gave you is that one called Cool Practices. Can you bring that up for a second? Or maybe a little bit longer than a second?
Here it comes.
Oh, yeah. Thanks. Thanks for making that bigger. Melissa Arante from Medallia and I have been working on this notion of people's experience of inclusion. Medallia does such great work with employee experience, and we started to just apply the concepts of employee experience to inclusion and realize that there are moments that matter where an employee, where the organization and its managers and the culture and its processes show up as being inclusive or not. And so if we look at those various moments that matter, we can capture a whole bunch of inclusion signals and link those to outcomes that matter. And I can get very geeky here. And I see Melissa Arante is on the phone. I hope I'm going to do justice to this. But take the example of whether the right people are involved in key decisions. So the decision moments that can be captured and measured might be things like meeting invite data or speaker data or the speech analysis of participants. And the insights that we can get there are whether certain groups are more frequently interrupted or left out, meaning that their input is not impacting outcomes. And I can go down each of these and give you examples of the inclusion experience and the signals that can be used to get various insights from. A big area is, network participation. It's the network or team makeup. It's Slack participation. It's, invites to Zoom calls. It's invitation list. It's, who's in the affinity group. And the kinds of insights you get from that are things like, is there any bias in team composition? What about the likes by team members? Are they the same or different by gender or any other diverse representation? What about connections to high-powered networks? What about the strength of connections within networks that's measured through organizational network analysis? You can also just analyze using text analytics or comments, the kind of participation that is available in networks. And then there's, I can go on and on here. maybe I better let you say something.
No, yeah, well, one, that is a comprehensive view, which the reason I call that out is that we as workers exist over time, and we have a bunch of different moments that matter. And one of the things that I've seen many organizations shy away from is that, hey, it's too complex. Hey, I don't want to go there. I already know that people don't feel included, or I have a problem. But to analyze it takes aggregating data and analyzing data, and I don't have the tools. Everyone else has their day job, and it doesn't become a priority. But one of the things I think you're highlighting is that this is worth analyzing. And I would go so far as to say, and again, I'm biased here, so I'll own my bias, that it is essential to analyze. Otherwise, you're just shooting in the dark. You don't know what, in fact, are those moments that matter. So your investments then don't reap the desired return, or they just go, by the wayside. So one of the things that, actually, were you going to comment on that?
Well, I was just going to say that it's maybe not as hard as people think to collect data and measure and analyze it, because anybody who's doing any kind of employee experience work, employee engagement work, can ask the right questions about feelings of inclusion. But there's also objective data available from our transactional systems, about, who's getting career mentorship opportunities, who are we working to retain? We can look at all of that information. That objective data is very easy to get. Some of it, maybe takes a little more investment, but it's available to us.
Well, that's a good segue into what can be done today. Do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, sure. So, we tackle inclusion analytics, through so many sources of data. We've got sentiment data, we've got survey data, which are the perception data. But, and then, as I said, there's all the transactional data from organizational interactions. There's engagement data, network participation, recognition data, meeting invitations, speaker time per, person in a meeting. There's demographic data, in all those transactional systems. One of the things, we did a webinar late last month on inclusion analytics with some of the People Intelligence Alliance Council members. And we were talking about, what are the places that organizations should start or could start. So it is that perception data, and then secondarily participation data. So if there's any prioritization to it, it's probably those two. But then also recognizing that there's so much objective data that can be brought to bear.
So, with that, when we're collecting all this data, there's a certain something that pops, isn't it? And I'm talking about this.
Yeah, well, there's this for sure. There's also the question of who owns the data, and it is the employees' data, and it is the organization's responsibility for stewarding that. And so the better question is, who do we need to partner with to get the data? And Stacia Gar was talking about there being kind of bubbles of influence of what HR owns and what's outside. And so, there's a need to partner outside of HR, for example, to get, financial data. But we have to also just remember that ultimately it is the employees' data, and we need to have a sense of humility and responsibility, and that's going to help us with our partnership to get data. And that other side, that has the ethics and privacy issues, some of the partnerships we need to make, excuse me, are, for example, if we're going to embark on any diversity and inclusion work, you need to make friends with your legal counsel. But then Lydia Wu, who was on our last webinar call, was saying that that demographic data that we're talking about for the majority of employees in the U.S., organizations are already reporting on that with their EEO-1 data. And if, in certain cases like California and Illinois, you're already reporting it via the Pay Equity Act. You have to report compensation and pay data. So, the data is not that, not being hidden. It's available to you, but you also need to make friends with your legal counsel. And then I think probably more important than anything is you have to be really clear about why you're collecting this data, and that, for example, you can't collect some data on religion or sexual identity. So, you just have to be very careful about some of this data. And I feel like I'm abdicating the questions around ethics and privacy. But I do want to say that the People Intelligence Alliance, that's the next theme that we're going to cover over the next couple of months. And you might want to say something about your commitment to that topic.
Well, it's what you just shared is one of the many reasons I love hugging you, and I just love who you are, because
You made me spit my coffee out.
When somebody else says that we have a responsibility to steward employee data, workers' data, it makes me smile inside, because we need more people understanding that and in turn taking appropriate action. And that is what I mean by people data for good. And that, to spell that out more clearly, it's promoting the ethical and responsible use of people data, analytics, and AI for the benefit of individuals, first and foremost, teams, groups, including diversity groups, organizations, and society at large. That's a very ambitious endeavor. However, we're going to need groups like the Positive Coaching Alliance. I went as an
All these
organization.
alliances out there. Huh?
All these alliance, People Intelligence Alliance, and others. When there's a pledge and there's, becoming a member and follower and all that stuff, but it's another thing to develop habits and a way of being, to check yourself, to have the courage to say no. Yes, because we can do something analytically, is it the right thing to do? Do we have the fortitude? Do we have the governance structure to press pause? And that's when we talk about an ethics charter and things like that, which we're going to be talking about next
month.
Two Wednesdays. Yes, on the 23rd.
Well, actually, the 23rd, the forum is still on inclusion analytics. And yes, we can certainly talk about that, but you have to show up, Al, and ask the questions.
I will be there
and provide the input from your perspective. So we have this series of, the council gets together and talks about a topic. We do a webinar, and then we do an open forum where people who have something to share or ask questions about come and that's the next one on February 23rd. So, I very much invite anybody who is listening to us today, join the People Intelligence Alliance. Once you've done that, you're able to sign up for the various events that we're doing. And one of the things we're doing with everything that we're coming up with is also, coming up with resources for practitioners. So on that particular slide, there were a number of reports that come out from researchers, from practitioners, that are doing really stellar work in inclusion analytics. And when we get to the topic of ethics and privacy, we'll share the sample ethics charters. We'll take a look at, who needs to be on the governance committee. And, while we can't dictate what organizations do, we can certainly, kind of guide some of what organizations begin to do. So look forward to our next theme, which will be ethics and privacy, after we finish the inclusion analytics one.
Well, yeah, I have to compliment you, Visier, the fellow council members, on bringing this to life, because I've been fortunate to watch it develop and grow, and I think we're onto something because the community needs this, and it's not just coming from one entity, one person. It does take a collective, diverse group to.
Wisdom of many, as we say.
Yes, absolutely.
And the contributions of people like you that guide the Alliance community towards using people data for good and eradicating bias, and a lot of that can come through connecting disparate data and doing our measurement and analysis on that to improve inclusion or diversity or skills or whatever it is that we're focused on.
Well, as we wrap here, thank you for being you. Thank you for doing what you do. How can people learn more about you and the People Intelligence Alliance and Visier?
Well, follow me on LinkedIn, on Twitter. I'm Lexy Martin. But more importantly, follow the People Intelligence Alliance. And if you resonate with any of the ideas that Al and I've talked about today, join the People Intelligence Organization, and it will give you access to the webinars we do, to the forums we do, and the content that beautiful people like you come up with to share.
And you, Lexy, you're very kind. I appreciate you immensely, and look forward to seeing you in person and getting one of those real hugs, very soon. So enjoy it. Yeah, look forward to it. All right. Thank you again. You be well. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.